Boom.
Oh, right, we're going straight into the next one.
Well, yeah, it's like 10:30 or something. So, Ms. Marvel. We're 2 episodes in, and I don't know how many episodes this has got. It's got some episodes, and
Presumably at least 6.
I'd have thought 6. What are they?
Because they're about 40 to 45 minutes, aren't they?
Yeah.
So they are longer than the half-hour ones, so they normally tend to be 6 parts.
Oh, excuse me. There does tend to be a bit of a format with Disney Plus as to, by the length of the episode, you can tell how many episodes you're getting, which is fine. Seems to work quite nicely for them. And sorry, I made a cat run underneath. Yeah, Ms. Marvel getting started with it. I have to say, where I've just been talking about Kenobi and gone, yeah, I'm enjoying it, but I'm not loving it. Ms. Marvel, I'm loving it. It is so wonderful. I like the feel of it. I like the style of it. I like the whole. I think of it as very Scott Pilgrim, which God, what year was that? 2011. So that's like 11 years ago. But that whole like how her text messages kind of appear. Sometimes it's like an emojis around them. Sometimes it's like on a neon sign in a shop, or whatever that is,
or on her bed sheet.
Yeah. I think there's a really lovely style to that because people of all kinds of ages, most of my communication with most of my friends is WhatsApp these days. It's not even text. It's not even SMS messaging. It's WhatsApp. Occasionally Facebook Messenger, but I would have said 80% of my communication, if I don't pick up the phone and talk to you, is I WhatsApp you. And that's me, 51. So, kids today sort of with their Insta and all the rest of it. I think what it's also doing a nice job of, and kind of, what's that? Nothing. Did you just jag?
What?
Did you just jag?
Yeah.
No? Oh, okay. And then, see now, I put you off in the last one. You've put me off in this one. We're equal.
WhatsApp 51.
Yeah, kids.
Communication.
Kids. Yeah. So I just sort of thinking about how. That's it. So it's just become such a thing that in any kind of large group of young people, like a school year, you're going to have. I'm not a young person. I'm just talking about what I see, and that is that you've got this kind of almost right to become Insta famous or YouTube famous or whatever. There's irony saying that on a YouTube video, right? But we have our 7 viewers. And we sit here watching YouTube videos about Disney and genre television shows.
He says we.
I largely. He watches with me. But that's probably about it. It's just we rip the piss out of the standard format that seems to go across. And then you see people, and I had one today. I mean, nice enough kid for sure. But this particular video, I won't go into details because I'm going to slate him in a second. But not slate him. His video, it was okay. It was fine. But I was looking at it and going, I don't think he's not particularly that engaging vocally. It was very flat and monotone. It was we were talking to the camera like this. And I'm like, and this video that came out like earlier in the day had 7,000 views. And I'm like,
is this
we get 4 views. Like, are we not slightly more entertaining than this?
I commented on with the whole, well, there's no need to watch it now because you.
Yes, that's exactly the one. That's exactly the one. Yeah.
Talking about now.
And then there are people who have very large followings that I also follow. And
so you're part of the problem, is what you're saying.
Oh, to a degree, absolutely. But then we watch it and we just go, you actually don't even know what you're talking about. We know different, and we're not even that into what you're talking about. You know exactly what I'm talking about there, don't you? But yeah, mystery as to how it appears to. You have to do the whole click like, click subscribe, comment down below, which we're just not really into. Don't get me wrong. If you want to comment, I'll always try and respond. But fuck me, if I suddenly get thousands of people commenting, I ain't replying to all of them. I just ain't got the will, frankly. Probably won't even read most of them. One or two every 6 months, I'm good. Outside of that, probably not. So it's just, and we do this really just for fun for us as much as anything.
So anyway, Ms. Marvel.
So Ms. Marvel, yeah, loving it. I think, because I grew up, and as did you for a large part of your childhood, in quite a heavy Muslim populated area. So I grew up in Luton, which is a massive Asian community, a large Muslim community. Also has large Hindi community. It was quite sort of spread out. And then within that, you had lots of communities from, different sort of areas or countries, so like your Bangladesh, your Pakistan, your India, or whatever it happened to be. So there was, I kind of knew these kind of families with the sort of like parents that had come from Pakistan, and so the children would not in a fight or a struggle. I mean, sometimes it is, but no more than any rebellious teenager. But the we want to keep our culture, and the child being the we live in America now, mom, kind of is the kind of thing I'm getting at. But I think they've got this really lovely family unit, because what you're not getting, I think, is a trap that is often fallen into, be that via religion or culture or whatever it happens to be, is the parents being so strict that they come across as kind of the bad guys. And I think what they're doing here quite lovely is that they're showing these parents are clearly very supportive, but also want to let the heritage run through, and they're finding the balance. That they're doing that, doing a great job of it, which I think is just not often seen. It feels fresh to me, rather than the sort of like either mother or father, and it's normally one or the other, never both, in media. That's very, very strict, and my daughter's not going out looking like that, and then other parent is like, oh no, go on, I'll sneak you out the back, and then it's like strict parent is like, oh, I can't believe you let them go to the disco, and
I think it's possibly safe to say, because I mean, obviously, and again, we are the last people to be talking about this, because of we are very white, so we have not had that that first-hand experience of what it is to be a person of colour.
No, we've only had it around us,
white Western society. But I think certainly from media that I've watched over the years, there is absolutely a place and a need for those kind of stories that talk about essentially culture clash and the fight to keep sort of your ancestral culture alive, while you're surrounded by another race culture, essentially, for the country you're living in. But I think what, as sort of Paul was saying, I think what Ms. Marvel does really well is that it does kind of touch on that, but ultimately the parent, what it's dealing with is an overprotective parents scenario.
Yeah.
And there are nice cultural touches in there, in terms of the fact that sort of, because obviously Ms. Marvel is Kamala Khan is the daughter of the family, and there is a brother, an older brother, and again you've got that whole well, you let him do this when he was a kid, so why don't you let me do it? So it does kind of play on some of the, if you like, I suppose, gender stereotyping and sort of some of the, sorry, our cats are being weird again, some of the double standards that you do get. But again, it doesn't do it in a way that basically says all these parents are bad people for doing that, that these parents are inherently sexist, etc., etc., etc. It's just very much just treating it as part of Kamala's background and what she has to deal with, essentially.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like they've crowbarred anything in. It doesn't feel like they're forcing any kind of message. It's just this is a family who happen to live in America, where the parents happen to be from, I believe, Pakistan.
They're Pakistan.
I know it's been mentioned, but I kind of got a bit lost with where the family originally came from in tonight's episode. But so there's kind of that aspect as well, and I just think it's nice to see something like that done well.
Plus, I think as well, I've been seeing, and again, social media can be a bit of an echo chamber, and quite often for the worst reasons. But certainly a lot of the kind of positive feedback that I've been seeing about sort of Ms. Marvel is from sort of people of sort of Pakistani, sort of Asia, or South Asian descent, who basically saying this is one of the most accurate representations they've seen of that type of family, because just like sort of with white British people, that there are a multitude of different like stereotypes and family dynamics and this that and the other. And again, I think this is what I think something like Ms. Marvel is doing so well, is it's kind of giving those of us outside of that framework a view in. So we are getting to see some of those other stereotypes. We are inundated, everyone in the world is inundated with the stereotypes about white Western family dynamics and sort of queer family dynamics and straight family dynamics and abusive domineering parents, all of that sort of stuff. You don't get to see that very often with non-white families,
and certainly not in a positive portrayal.
Yeah, I mean, again, another show that's been doing that really well, which is also kind of thematically appropriate for what we were talking about, and kind of hinting at earlier, is Sex Education with God, I forget the character's name in the family, but Nakuti, who's going to be the new doctor.
Eric. Eric.
Yes, Eric. Who obviously you'll get to see a portrayal of. I want to say they're Nigerian, but I could be wrong.
I can't remember, if I'm honest.
But again, it's kind of seeing that sort of.
Oh no, I think it is, isn't it? Because there was that whole plot line where he went over to stay with family.
Yeah. But again, kind of looking at sort of that dynamic, and it's one of those things you get with a lot of portrayals of black families, particularly with queer storylines, is that somehow if you're black, you're inherently more homophobic, more transphobic, more this, more that than a white family. And we all know that's bullshit. Any queer kid growing up knows that's bullshit, because white families are just as, if not more.
Oh, I've seen. I mean, my family wasn't great, but I saw so much worse.
Yes, but there is absolutely this kind of this weird, and again, it's a form of racism. But there's this weird perception that if you are sort of Black Caribbean or Black African, you are somehow coming from an inherently homophobic culture, as if the various white cultures dotted throughout the globe aren't inherently homophobic themselves, kind of thing.
Hey, America!
It's this weird double standard that seems to go on. So a show like that, which actually shows just how supportive his family is of him, in some respects, as much because of his sort of sexuality and what it makes him as a person, is also nice. And again, not something you see very often portrayed in sort of mainstream media. Well, I suppose sexual education probably isn't massively mainstream in that sense, because obviously it is dealing with quite a mature subject. But this is something I think that Ms. Marvel does really well. It's what a lot of the more recent Marvel movies are finally starting to do really well. Is kind of looking at some of those like sort of representation issues that they've been accused of justifiably in the past, and going, you're right, we need to do better, and they so far genuinely are doing better.
I think the other thing is Marvel have done this amazing job of actually drawing in. There's some people you're never going to change, right? Changing someone's mind is like the hardest thing to do. But they have been taking kind of the less hardcore around the edges on a journey with them. So they gave them like lots of, Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, look, here's white male heroes, blah, blah, blah. And then they slide in Black Widow, and then they slide. So what they've actually done is started at that extreme end, and they've just gradually, and then it's like, oh, Pepper Potts actually is a bit more influential, and and then they've started bringing in. So they've done that whole thing, and then they bring in Black Panther, then they bring in Captain Marvel. Now they're bringing in Ms. Marvel. Do you know what I mean? So actually, if you look at it, I don't know if that's the truth, but it's almost like it's gradually reel you in. So if you are sort of somebody who's not of a more open mindset to such things, if you are sort of kind of bigots my family are, which isn't these days out and out hate, but but still, not actually great at it, you kind of reel them in a bit slowly, and then you've kind of got them watching this stuff before they realise it and can start getting up in arms and writing to points of view about it.
I personally, I think that's a good point. I think it's more for me because, again, I mentioned earlier that Marvel, for a long time, and as I mentioned, justifiably, was accused of being a very undiverse sort of casting, and yes, you could argue that some of that is probably down to the fact that and until various like mergers and acquisitions and Disney and all that sort of stuff, that they had a limited pool of, if you like, big name hero characters that they still owned that they could make movies about.
Well, also it's a Hollywood problem.
Yeah,
you talk to any sort of black person at the Oscars, and again, things have changed and there have been some good years. I can remember, I think it was 2002 when Halle Berry won for Monsters Ball, and I think Denzel won something the same year, and I think like best director or best film went to a black guy, and it was all like, oh, it's finally happening, Hollywood's finally recognising us. But then, like, over the last 2 or 3 years, I've heard the same Oscar speeches, and I'm like, well, hang on, did we not fix it? Shouldn't this have been fixed 20 years ago? So obviously that was as awful as it sounds, token gesture that Hollywood then shied back away from, because the message is still needing to be said. So is that less of a Marvel problem? I mean, it's still their problem to fix, but is it more of that's a Hollywood-wide problem? So your execs at the top have got to kind of, again, be drawn on this, I don't know why, but pulled along this journey. And so are people like Kevin Feige actually, I mean, probably not from the very beginning, but at some point going, this is how we're going to do it. So we're going to gradually do this, and then we're going to do, so we kind of did the whole Iron Man 3 thing with Tony Slattery, but now we're actually going to go and we're going to do 10 Rings properly, and we're going to bring in that Asian culture. Then we're going to do Eastern Asia or Southern Asian, or what was the phrase they used? Southern Asian
for
Miss Marvel.
Southern Asian.
I thought Pakistan was near at the top. Is it not? Is it down the bottom, or is it just a phrase?
It's a phrase,
Right, okay.
I mean, because you've got, again, it's
might be too literal.
Yes.
Okay, fine. So anyway, Southern Asian. But yes, so is that, I don't know. This isn't really talk actually about Ms. Marvel much at all. It's just more the internal politics.
But kind of, I think what I was sort of saying with Marvel Jet, which is kind of why we're now getting these shows, is that for me personally, I think it's largely that Marvel essentially has put in the legwork to get to a point where it's now, because it's something it gets accused of by all kinds of like movie snobs and whatever, as just like, oh yeah, it's a popcorn sort of movie, it's generic, it's formulaic, as if somehow if it's entertaining, if it's good, that's a bad thing. And also I would question calling Marvel sort of formulaic, in that they do a lot of playing with genres with the movies, certainly with the TV shows, but I think they've gotten to a point culturally now where they are kind of so ingrained, they've got such an established fan base in terms of like what Western society, late stage capitalism, all that sort of stuff cares about, which is they make the money regardless of what they do. That they can now go, we're going to make a film about a female superhero, we're going to make a film about a black superhero, we're going to make a film about a gay superhero, and if a lot of you don't like it, we don't care, because we're still going to rake in the millions. But what that has, I think, allowed is that kind of creative space now where they can afford to take some risks, which is what I think we are seeing with things like Ms. Marvel. And I think Marvel, and whether that's because of, for all its faults, Disney is very good at talent sort of identifying and kind of matching up. But one thing they've become very good at is they are putting together creative teams behind shows that kind of reflect what they're doing. You look at the cast list, the production list, the directors, the producers.
Well, that little making of thing we watched last week, it was all of the people off stage were talking about the fact that they're writing about, not their experiences because they're superheroes, but their experiences because they're from Muslim backgrounds growing up in America, or Pakistani backgrounds growing up in America, or whatever their situation is. So it's nice to see that, because best one in the world, I couldn't write about this situation. I could only base it on, again, friends I had in school and seeing what their thing is, but I'd probably do a okay job, but I wouldn't do a good job because I wasn't living it. You write what you know ultimately. So I think it's really, it's to their credit that they go, right, okay, so let's source Muslim and Pakistani teams to put this together. Or maybe they got together and went to Marvel and went, hey, can we do Ms. Marvel? I don't know which way around it went, but
I think it also helps that Iman Vellani, who plays Ms. Marvel, is a huge Ms. Marvel comics geek. Again, as we discovered by watching this, it was only about 10 minutes, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's only like 10 minutes long.
Behind the scenes type thing. But she knew more about the character than anyone else on the entire production team. She possibly knows more about it than quite a few of the execs at Marvel, by the sound of things, because she's one of those fangirls that's read the comic and basically, and it kind of goes to, I think, to some of the things we were kind of dancing around with the other conversation, but what you really started to see when movies like Black Panther came out, which is basically representation. Iman Vellani's talked about how amazing it was for her as. Again, I think they even use a paraphrase line of it in the show. Brown girls from New Jersey don't get to be superheroes, because this is exactly what shows like this, films like Black Panther, are kind of demonstrating, is that anyone can be, in an ideal world, anyone can be what they want to be, and we have it as queer people growing up. Because we went through the whole lack of representation in the media, and obviously we're both lucky we're white, so we've always been surrounded by people that represent our kind of racial identity, even if they don't necessarily reflect our lived experiences as queer people. But of course, what you then find very easy to forget is that that is also the case for anyone who isn't white. You don't get to see, or didn't get to see, many black heroes. I'm not even talking about superheroes, but sort of well-rounded black characters that you can aspire to be, or Asian characters that you can aspire to be, or anything like that. So kind of, and it's still taking way too long than it needs to. But to actually be getting to a point where multiple sort of groups of people, multiple identities of people are finally starting to be represented in non-stereotypical but familiar ways. So I think one of the best things I saw, which I think actually happened in the first episode, was Ms. Marvel's friend obviously coming around to a house. Bruno, is it Bruno?
Yeah.
Yes.
So we don't talk about Bruno
because we did that, and obviously she's got her mum sort of is there, and I think literally sort of Bruno and Kamala sort of walk in, and Bruno's just like the whole no, I can't stay, and he's pretty much mum's all like, just let me get you some food then. Literally disappears into the kitchen and comes back 2 seconds later with a bag with 4 full lots of Tupperware with 4 different dishes. The number of comments I've seen on social media from sort of South Asian sort of families where they go, my God, how have they got my mother onto this show? It's the little touches like that kind of show that understanding of the subject matter, be that racial identity, sexual identity, gender, whatever it may be. And I think for me, those are the things I love about Ms. Marvel, is that it's smart, it's respectful, it's diverse in the best possible way, and I'm genuinely excited to see where they go with the storyline generally, just in terms of the character development and what we're getting to see about Kamala and her family.
Well, yeah, because one thing I took from this week's episode was this mysterious great grandmother.
Yes.
It's the great grandmother we're
Because
missing,
it's
right?
her mum's grandmother.
Yeah, and it's they're tying it very much into the partition, which, to be fair, I knew shit all about until Doctor Who did an episode about it. So my knowledge is probably terrible because it's based purely on whatever Chibnall put in that episode, whoever wrote it. I'd hope it was.
It wasn't Chibnall that wrote that.
No, I'd hope it was sort of accurate, apart from the Doctor Who stuff. Anyway, so I don't know. It just kind of feels like it's going to be related somehow, or possibly that's just coincidental because that's the period of time. So she was trying to escape, a country or whatever, and that's the magic ties into her being on the run. So don't know. But there's clearly that family connection coming, and then there was the way it ended this week with boy she'd technically kind of been on a date from. Now turns out that he's actually her great uncle. Orcs. I did wonder because he was a bit too suave in that car. That's not an average 19-year-old's car, right?
No.
So I was going a bit. Girl's got money. But I mean, what I love about the character of Kamala, is she's us. She's that geek who would love to be a superhero, but actually, when you give them the power, like she's got the power to run around the building, and then she's there edging along the side, and that boy, meantime, is actually going to fall to his death.
Yes.
Until she goes, oh, hang on, I can just run, and the little things are going to appear. That's us, isn't it? That's all the people. That's the real person suddenly bestowed with powers, rather than the sort of like I grew up in Asgard or whatever, or I was trained to be the next Black Panther. I've suddenly got, oh my god. I dread to think if I suddenly had any kind of powers, I'd be all over the place. I'd be a state. It's probably a good job I haven't got them. But that kind of ditzy cuteness, I think, is something that's massively relatable to an audience. Because as much as we all would love to think we were super cool if it happened to us, none of us would be, because we would all be like, oh my god, and it would, you just wouldn't at all, I don't think. So I love this show. I think it's just the style of it, the thought put into it, like you say, the detail about the sort of culture of the family,
the colour palette.
Just everything about it. It's bloody gorgeous. And Ms. Marvel's headed to the big screen. But I'm hoping one series and then popping up in odd Avengers movies isn't all we get of her, because I think she's just got far too much for us, just to be limited. I would like to see multiple seasons between movies that bounce in and out or whatever. But yeah, I mean, she totally deserves a big screen outing too, because it's just glorious.
Iman Vellani is a star.
We absolutely love you, my dear. Well, the entire cast.
Yeah.
But you in particular. We got a thing.